The man sitting on the bench looked like he had been forgotten by the world. His clothes were worn and layered despite the summer heat. A faded baseball cap pulled low over his face, and a pair of scuffed sneakers that had seen better days decades ago. Nobody gave him a second glance as they walked past the outdoor court in Wilmington, North Carolina. It was August 2003, and the basketball court in this working-class neighborhood was alive with the sounds of a pickup game. Among the players was 22-year-old Derek Matthews, who had just finished his college career with decent stats, but no scholarship offers for the professional leagues. His bitterness about being overlooked had curdled into an arrogance that made him insufferable to anyone who spent more than 5 minutes around him. What Derek didn't know was that the homeless man watching from the bench was about to teach him the most expensive lesson of his life, and it wouldn't cost a single dollar. Derek had been dominating the court for the past hour, talking trash after every basket, loudly proclaiming himself the best player in the state. His game was physical and aggressive, built more on intimidation than skill. He wasn't particularly talented, but he was strong enough and mean enough to push around the amateur players who showed up at this court. After hitting a contested layup, Derek threw his arms up and shouted to everyone within earshot that nobody in North Carolina could guard him. That's when he noticed the man on the bench stand up and slowly walk toward the court. The homeless man moved with an odd grace that contradicted his disheveled appearance. He stopped at the edge of the concrete and spoke quietly, his voice barely audible over the chatter of the other players. "Mind if I run next game?" Derek turned and looked at him with undisguised contempt. The man's clothes smelled like he had been sleeping rough, his beard was unkempt, and everything about him screamed desperation. Derek's face twisted into a cruel smile. He saw an opportunity to entertain his audience and boost his own ego even further. "Man, we don't need charity cases slowing down the game," Derek said loud enough for everyone to hear. Several players laughed nervously, uncomfortable with the cruelty but unwilling to speak up. The homeless man didn't react to the insult. He just stood there calmly, his eyes hidden beneath the brim of his cap. "I can keep up," he said simply. "I used to play a little." Derek's grin widened. "Oh, you used to play a little?" He mimicked the man's voice mockingly. "Well, I used to play a lot. 4 years varsity, 3 years college. I was all-conference my senior year. What were you, some washed-up has-been who never made it?" The homeless man tilted his head slightly. "Something like that." Derek laughed and looked at his friends. "Tell you what, old-timer, you and me, one-on-one. First to 21 points. You win, I'll give you $100. I win, you admit in front of everyone here that you're a nobody who should have stayed on that bench." The other players exchanged uncomfortable glances. This felt wrong, like watching someone kick a dog. But Derek was the alpha of this court, and nobody wanted to challenge him. The homeless man considered the offer for a moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, but let's make it interesting. If I win, you don't owe me money. You owe me something more valuable. You have to listen to what I tell you for exactly 15 minutes without interrupting. Deal?" Derek couldn't believe his luck. This would be the easiest bet he ever won. Deal. Let's go. If you're hooked on this story and want to see what happens when arrogance meets a mystery opponent, smash that subscribe button right now. Hit the like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear this incredible story. Drop a comment telling me if you think you know where this is going, because I guarantee the ending will surprise you. Now, let's get back to it. The court cleared as word spread that Derek was about to play a homeless man one-on-one. More people gathered around the fence, some filming on their phones, others just curious to see how badly this would go. Derek took the ball first, his confidence radiating like heat off asphalt. He started with his signature move, a hard shoulder into the defender followed by a spin to the basket. But something impossible happened. The homeless man wasn't there. Derek spun into empty air, his momentum carrying him forward awkwardly. Before he could recover, he felt a gentle tap and the ball was gone. Stolen so cleanly he didn't even see the hand that took it. The homeless man dribbled twice and took a simple jump shot from 15 feet. The form was textbook perfect, elbow aligned, follow-through complete. Rotation on the ball flawless. Swish. Nothing but net. 1-0. Several people in the crowd made impressed sounds. That was a professional-level shot. and everyone there knew it. Derek's smile faltered for just a second, but he shook it off. "Lucky shot, old man. Let's see you do that again." The homeless man passed the ball back without comment, his face still hidden beneath that worn cap. Derek came at him harder this time, using his size advantage to try to back him down toward the basket. But every time he tried to establish position, he found himself subtly redirected, not with force, but with perfect positioning. It was like trying to push against water. Derek attempted a turnaround jumper in frustration. The homeless man's hand appeared at exactly the right moment, not swatting the ball away, but simply contesting the shot with perfect timing. The ball clanged off the rim. The rebound was secured before Derek even turned around. Another shot, this time from the wing. Same perfect form, same result. Swish. 2-0. The crowd was starting to murmur now. Something was off about this homeless man. His movements were too precise, too practiced. The way he handled the ball suggested thousands of hours of high-level training. Derek was starting to sweat, and not just from the heat. He drove hard to the basket, using his shoulder aggressively. The homeless man absorbed the contact and stayed vertical, drawing the offensive foul so obviously that even Derek's friends groaned. "That's a charge, man," one of them called out. "Derek's ball." But Derek knew they were right. The homeless man had been perfectly set, feet planted, taking the contact in the chest. It was a textbook defensive play. This pattern continued with increasing desperation from Derek. Every move he tried was countered. Every shot he took was contested. Every time he thought he had an advantage, it evaporated like morning fog. The homeless man wasn't showboating or talking trash. He was simply playing fundamentally perfect basketball, the kind you see in professional games where every movement has purpose and efficiency. The score climbed steadily, 5-0, 8-0, 12-0. Derek hadn't scored a single point. His frustration was turning into panic, and panic made him sloppy. He started forcing shots, traveling, committing offensive fouls. The crowd, which had been amused at first, was now watching in stunned silence. This wasn't just a homeless man playing basketball. This was someone who had clearly played at an elite level. When the score reached 15-0, Derek was breathing hard, bent over with his hands on his knees. The homeless man stood calmly, barely winded, still maintaining that quiet presence that revealed nothing. "You ready to keep going?" he asked gently. Derek wanted to quit. Every fiber of his being wanted to walk off that court and pretend this never happened. But his pride wouldn't let him. He thought about the $100 he would have had to pay if he lost. He thought about the humiliation of admitting defeat in front of all these people who had watched him dominate this court for months. He nodded silently and prepared for the ball. The homeless man's next shot was from three-point range. It went in so smoothly it seemed inevitable. 18-0. Then another. 20-0. Derek stood frozen, knowing what was coming next. The homeless man held the ball, looking at Derek for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He passed the ball to Derek. "Your shot," he said. "Make it, and you get 1 point. At least you won't get skunked." The offer was somehow more humiliating than if he had just finished the game. It was pity, and Derek knew it. He took the ball with shaking hands and shot from close range. It bounced off the rim. The homeless man caught it softly, and in one fluid motion took his final shot from the top of the key. Perfect rotation, perfect arc, perfect result. 21-0. Game over. The crowd was completely silent now. Derek stood in the center of the court, his world crumbling around him. He had been destroyed, humiliated, exposed as the mediocre player he truly was. The homeless man walked over to the bench and sat down slowly, as if his body was older than it looked. "Derek," he called out, "come here. You owe me 15 minutes. Derek walked over on unsteady legs and sat down next to him, too defeated to resist. The other players and spectators kept their distance but stayed close enough to hear. The homeless man pulled off his baseball cap, and that's when several people in the crowd gasped. Even with the beard and the weathered appearance, the face was unmistakable. It was Michael Jordan. Some people pulled out their phones immediately, others just stood with their mouths open. Michael Jordan was sitting on a public court in Wilmington, North Carolina, his hometown, dressed as a homeless man. The revelation sent shockwaves through the crowd, but Jordan raised his hand for quiet. Derek sat frozen, his mind unable to process what was happening. He had just talked trash to Michael Jordan. He had just been demolished by the greatest basketball player who ever lived. "I do this sometimes," Jordan said quietly, looking out at the court. "I come back home, dress down and watch. I want to see the game in its purest form, without the circus that follows me everywhere. I want to see who really loves basketball and who just loves the attention it brings them. Derek, I've been watching you for weeks. You've got some physical tools, but your game is built on intimidation and arrogance. You push around players who aren't good enough to push back, and you've convinced yourself that makes you special. It doesn't. It makes you a bully." Derek wanted to speak, to apologize, to explain, but Jordan had said 15 minutes without interrupting, and he was going to honor that. Jordan continued, "You told people you were all conference in college. I looked into that. You know what I found? You played at a Division III school and averaged 9 points a game your senior year. All conference in the weakest division, barely getting playing time, and you've been using that tiny achievement to act like you're something you're not. Do you know what that tells me? It tells me you're more interested in the image of being a basketball player than actually being one." "Here's the thing about arrogance," Jordan said, his voice taking on the tone of someone who had learned these lessons the hard way. "Real confidence doesn't need to announce itself. Real skill doesn't need to bully weaker opponents to prove it exists. I've played against the best players in the world. I've won 6 championships. I've got 5 MVP awards. And you know what? I still work on my fundamentals every single day. I still study the game. I still find ways to improve. Because the moment you think you've mastered something is the moment you stop growing. You want to know why you didn't score a single point against me today? It wasn't just because I'm more talented. It's because you have no discipline. Every move you tried was predictable because you rely on athleticism and aggression instead of strategy and skill. You telegraphed every shot by looking at the rim too early. You traveled on half your drives because you don't have proper footwork. You committed offensive fouls because you think basketball is about imposing your will instead of reading the defense and finding the smart play. These are things that separate playground players from professionals. Talent might get you noticed, but discipline and fundamentals are what make you great. Right now, if you're getting real value from this story and these lessons, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Give this video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who needs to hear this message about humility and real skill. Leave a comment telling me what your biggest takeaway is so far. Your support helps us bring more incredible stories like this one. Thank you. Now let's continue. Jordan shifted on the bench, his eyes still fixed on the court. "I'm going to tell you something that my high school coach told me when I was your age. He said that being the best player in your immediate circle means nothing if you're not willing to test yourself against real competition. You've made yourself a big fish in a tiny pond, and you've gotten comfortable there. That's the death of potential. You should be seeking out players who are better than you, learning from them, getting humbled by them, because that's how you grow. Instead, you're here beating up on recreational players and acting like you're a star. The scariest part is that you actually have some ability. I saw flashes of it today, even in how badly you played. You have decent size, acceptable speed, and you clearly understand the basic mechanics of the game. But you've wasted it. You've spent your energy building a false reputation instead of building real skills. You've practiced your trash talk more than your left hand. You've focused on looking like a player instead of becoming one. And now here you are, 22 years old, with no professional prospects, no scholarship offers, nothing but a local reputation that just got destroyed in front of everyone who gave you that reputation." Jordan turned to look directly at Derek for the first time. The younger man couldn't meet his eyes. "But here's the thing," Jordan continued. "This doesn't have to be your ending. It can be your beginning. You know why I agreed to play you today? Because I saw something in your eyes when you were talking trash. Underneath all that fake confidence and insecurity dressed up as arrogance, there was still a spark, a small part of you that genuinely loves this game. That's the part I want to reach. That's the part that can still be saved if you're willing to do the work. Starting tomorrow, if you're serious, I want you to go to the community center at 6 a.m. There's a coach there named Marcus Reynolds who trains young players trying to make it to the next level. He's a friend of mine, and I've already talked to him about you. He's expecting you. His training is brutal. It's not about looking cool or dominating weaker players. It's about breaking down every bad habit you've developed and rebuilding your game from scratch. Most people quit within a week because they can't handle having their ego destroyed every single day. But if you stick with it, if you actually listen and learn and put in the work, you might become something real instead of something fake. Jordan stood up slowly, preparing to leave. The crowd that had gathered was still there, phones out, but maintaining a respectful distance. Before I go, I want you to understand something that took me years to learn. Success in basketball or in anything isn't about being better than other people. It's about being better than you were yesterday. Every single day you should be able to point to something you improved, some weakness you addressed, some skill you refined. That's the only competition that matters. Not beating up on players at a local court, not trash-talking people who can't match your physicality, but the internal competition to become the best version of yourself. You embarrassed yourself today, and that's good. Embarrassment is a teacher if you let it be. It shows you where you really are versus where you think you are. Most people never get that clarity because they surround themselves with people who won't challenge them. They build their entire identity on being the best in their little world, and they never realize how small their world actually is. Today, your world got bigger. You got to see what real skill looks like, what real discipline produces, what real mastery means. The question now is what you do with that information. Derek finally found his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. Why? Why would you help me after how I treated you? Jordan smiled for the first time, and it transformed his face from the weathered homeless man to the competitive legend millions knew. Because someone did it for me. When I was in high school, I got cut from the varsity team. Cut. The greatest basketball player of all time didn't make his high school varsity team as a sophomore. I was devastated. I went home and cried. But my older brother and my coach sat me down and told me the same thing I'm telling you. This is information, not condemnation. Use it to get better. So I did. I practiced harder than anyone else. I addressed my weaknesses. I built my game on fundamentals and discipline, not just on raw ability. And eventually I became something more than I had imagined possible. But here's the critical part that most people miss in that story. I stayed humble. Even after I made the team, even after I became a star, even after I went pro and won championships, I never forgot what it felt like to be cut. I never forgot that there's always someone working harder, always someone more talented, always another level to reach. The day you think you've arrived is the day you start declining. I'm 40 years old, retired from professional basketball, and I still work out every day. I still study game film. I still find ways to improve, even though I'll never play competitively again. Why? Because discipline isn't something you turn on and off. It's who you are. Jordan pulled his cap back on, transforming once again into the unassuming figure who could walk through the world unrecognized. He started to walk away but turned back one final time. Derek, everybody here saw what happened today. By tomorrow, everyone in this whole area is going to know that you got destroyed by someone you thought was beneath you. You've got two choices. You can let that define you as a failure, as the arrogant kid who got what he deserved. Or you can let it transform you into someone better. You can show up at that gym tomorrow morning and start the real work. You can prove that you're capable of growth, of humility, of becoming something more than what you are right now. The choice is yours. I can open the door, but you have to walk through it. As Jordan walked away, the crowd parted silently. Several people were crying, moved by what they had witnessed. This wasn't just a basketball lesson. It was a masterclass in humility, in the difference between image and substance, in the responsibility that comes with talent. Derek sat on that bench for another 30 minutes after everyone else had left, his mind racing through everything that had happened. The humiliation burned, yes, but underneath it was something else. A strange feeling he hadn't experienced in years. Hope, real hope, not the fake confidence he had been performing for so long. Hope that maybe, just maybe, he could become something real if he was willing to do the work. The next morning, Derek showed up at the community center at 5:45 a.m., 15 minutes early. Coach Reynolds was already there, setting up cones and equipment. He looked at Derek for a long moment, then nodded. "Michael told me you'd either show up early or not at all. Glad to see which one you chose. Let's get started." What followed was 6 months of the most brutal training Derek had ever experienced. Coach Reynolds broke down every aspect of his game and rebuilt it from the foundation up. Footwork drills until his legs shook. Shooting form repetitions until his arms went numb. Defensive slides until he understood that defense was about positioning and anticipation, not just physical intimidation. Ball handling with both hands until ambidexterity became automatic. Film study where every mistake was highlighted and analyzed. But more than the physical training, Coach Reynolds worked on Derek's mindset. He brought in college players who were better than Derek to scrimmage against. He put him in situations where he was the worst player on the court, forcing him to learn instead of dominate. He taught him that real confidence comes from competence, from knowing you've put in the work, from respecting the game and your opponents. Slowly, painfully, Derek transformed from an arrogant local bully into a disciplined student of basketball. 8 months after his encounter with Jordan, Derek got a tryout with a semi-professional team. He didn't dominate. He didn't talk trash. He just played solid fundamental basketball. He made the team as a role player, someone who did the little things right, who played defense, who made the extra pass. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. More importantly, he had earned it through genuine work, not through intimidating, weaker competition. Before we close out this incredible story, I need you to take action right now. If this story moved you, if you learned something valuable, hit that subscribe button. Click the bell icon so you never miss our content. Give this video a like and share it with 3 people who need to hear this message about real success versus fake confidence. Drop a comment below telling me about a time you got humbled and what you learned from it. Your engagement makes these stories possible. Thank you for being here. Years later, a reporter writing a story about Jordan's impact on basketball tracked Derek down and asked him about that day. Derek, now a respected youth basketball coach himself, smiled at the memory. "That day changed my entire life, but not in the way people might think. The basketball lesson was valuable, sure, but the real lesson was about character. Michael Jordan, the greatest player who ever lived, took time out of his day to teach some arrogant nobody a lesson he didn't have to teach. He could have just embarrassed me and walked away. Instead, he invested in me. He saw something worth saving and gave me the tools to save it. That's greatness, not the 6 championships or the scoring titles. The willingness to lift someone up, even after knocking them down." The story of Michael Jordan disguised as a homeless man became legendary in basketball circles. Not because of the dominance he displayed, that was expected, but because of the grace he showed afterward. He demonstrated that true mastery isn't about destroying others. It's about elevating them. He proved that strength of character matters more than strength of body, that humility in victory is more impressive than the victory itself, and that the greatest gift a master can give isn't a demonstration of their skill, but the knowledge of how that skill was built. Derek still has a photo from that day, taken by someone in the crowd. It shows him sitting on the bench next to a homeless-looking man, both of them looking out at the basketball court. To anyone who doesn't know the story, it's just 2 people resting after a game. But Derek knows the truth. It's the moment his real life began. The moment he stopped pretending to be something he wasn't and started working to become something he could be. That photograph sits in his office where he coaches young players, and when kids come in with too much arrogance and not enough substance, he tells them this story. Most of them don't believe it until he shows them the video that someone posted online, now viewed millions of times. The legend of Michael Jordan, dressed as a homeless man, teaching an arrogant young player the most valuable lesson of his life. The encounter reminds us that appearance means nothing. The most valuable lessons often come from the most unexpected sources. That ego is the enemy of growth. That real confidence is quiet, while insecurity is loud. That discipline and fundamentals will always beat raw talent that isn't cultivated. That being humbled isn't the end. It's the beginning if you're wise enough to recognize it. And most importantly, that greatness isn't just about what you achieve, it's about what you give back, how you treat others, and the legacy you leave beyond your own accomplishments. Michael Jordan could have spent that day doing anything. He chose to spend it teaching. That's the mark of a true champion. See you in the next video with more incredible stories that will change how you see success.